Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Heart of Gratitude. I am Bethany Jordan. I am so happy to be here with you guys. It's a new year, and yes, it's been 3 weeks since the last episode, but here I am. We are going to be starting a new year, and I'm so excited to see where God takes this podcast. I'm hoping to continue day by day and week by week. We're going to get back to a normal schedule, but I'm happy you guys are here right now. So yeah, I hope you guys had a good New Year's. I hope I'm not the only person out there that didn't make it to 12. I fell asleep and woke up at exactly 12:07, and I was just like, oh, yep, there it is. We're in the new year. I went to sleep in 2024, woke up in 2025. I don't know, the past few years I haven't done anything crazy for the New Year's Eve kind of thing. Maybe 2025 to 2026 that'll change. Who knows? I'm not mad at it. If anybody knows me, I do love my sleep. I do quite like getting good sleep and some naps in here and there. If anyone knows me really well, they know this about me. Hence the why I am always running late to places, because I value sleep. Anyway, which is another thing that's going to change in 2025. Guys, I'm the type of person that if I'm not in a rush, it's not at the forefront of my brain, kind of thing. If I'm not rushing to get places, it's just oh, I still have time. I'm not in a rush. And then the second I'm oh, I have no more time, that's when I get to places and get stuff done, I guess. Maybe it's the ADD in me. We'll say that. But anyway, we're going to, start a new year on the right foot. I hope, like I said, everybody's new year has been good. This past couple of weeks, the past few days, I had been down sick. I had either food poisoning or something, and then 101 fever, but everybody around me is getting sick. Even my students are getting sick. I'm getting texts from them, and they're just yeah, I'm not coming in because I'm sick. And I'm 'tis the season, I guess. And also when it comes to working with little kids, and they're just always coughing in your face. And it's just child, cover your mouth. And I just pull out this huge bottle of hand sanitizer, and I'm just nope, give me your hands, hand sanitizer. But yet I still got sick. Anyway, let's hope that's the only time I get sick this year. I'm really looking forward to summer. And I know winter basically only just started, but I'm already looking towards the summer. And I've never been that type of person, but last 2 years, or last year and this year, I'm looking forward to the summer. Yeah. But big side turn, big jumping into it. We're going to be talking about Jonah today. And I had started a study in Jonah, and there was something that really stood out to me. And obviously, if you've been here before, you've heard it multiple times out of my mouth or either out of Serena's mouth, that everything in the Bible that you read, there's always something you can glean from it, always something that, God can use to open your eyes to something. And that's something that I always pray when I come into studying the Bible, Lord, open my eyes to something new, open my eyes to something that I need to see, something that you want to show to me, something I need to work on in my life, and be open to what God has to say in his word. That's probably the most important thing when it comes to studying his word. We can't be staunch or stubborn in our way. We have to be willing to hear God's word and be corrected, most important thing. And so I'm going to read the first chapter in Jonah. It's a bit of it's not that long. It's 17 verses, but to get the full picture, I'm just going to read of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to read Jonah chapter 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of, disclaimer, sorry about the pronunciation of these names, Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and call out against it, for their evil has come up before me. But Jonah rose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it, to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. But the Lord hurled a great wind upon the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship threatened to break up. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried out to his God. And they hurled the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it for them. But Jonah had gone down into the inner part of the ship, and had lain down, and was fast asleep. So the captain came and said to him, What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us, that we may not perish. And they said to one another, Come, let us cast lots, that we may know on whose account this evil has come upon us. So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. Then they said to him, Tell us on whose account this evil has come upon us. What is your occupation, and where do you come from? What is your country, and what people are you? And he said to them, I am Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. Then the men were exceedingly afraid, and said to him, What is this that you have done? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. Then they said to him, What shall we do to you, that the sea may be quiet down for us? For the sea grew more and more tempestuous. He said to them, Pick me up and hurl me into the sea. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to the dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. Therefore they called out to the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for this man's life, and lay not on us the innocent blood, for you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you. So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. And the Lord appointed a great fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Now, everyone who knows the Bible grew up, this is like one of the biggest stories you hear as a child growing up in the church, Jonah and the big fish, and the big whale. Nobody, people say it's a whale, but it says it's a great fish. I instantly go to the VeggieTales Jonah. It's just always told. It's a story that you hear growing up, and now rereading it, just really taking a deeper look at it. There's so much meaning in this story, and so much of God's character you can see. In Jonah, it shows God's sovereignty. It shows his kindness, his mercy, power, grace, even his compassion. All of this and there's only 4 chapters in the book of Jonah. It's a short book, short story, but you find all of this in the book of Jonah, and all of these characteristics of God and showing who God is, and most of all, you see his kindness. Now, at first glance, some people might be like, the great storm, like, how is that kindness and all of this? But if we really break it down, we see Jonah, who he first is running away from the will of God. God calls him to go to Nineveh to spread his word and bring him to the people of Nineveh. And Jonah feels like he and his people are the only ones who should, have this gift of God, kind of thing. And so throughout the story, God proves that his love and his compassion and mercy is not only showed to, the Hebrews, but to even the pagans. And we see that as the Ninevites, the end of the story, the Ninevites turn to God. And then even these sailors, which I love the end of the first chapter, verses 14 through 16, it says, Therefore, They, the sailors, called out to the Lord, O Lord, let us not perish for the man's life, and lay not on us innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you. So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. So, like I said, just in the first chapter alone, we see all of these characteristics of God, his compassion, grace, power, mercy, kindness, and his sovereignty. And the sailors, by the end of this, they turned to fear the Lord, and they turned and made vows to God. And in all of this, Jonah is running away from doing the will of God. But little did he know, in God's sovereignty, he was bringing God to these pagan sailors and doing exactly what Jonah didn't want to do. God used his sin and used Jonah running away not only to eventually bring him back to Nineveh, which was the original, plan for Jonah to go and bring God to Nineveh, but in his running away to Tarshish, God, in his sovereignty, is bringing himself to these sailors as well, and using Jonah's sin to further his kingdom and to further bring people to him, which I just loved that part where it's just like kind of ironic in a sense, where it's just like here Jonah wants to kind of like keep God to himself and to his people, and he doesn't think that anyone else should have this truth, and God's just there. It's like kind of chuckling, like, I'm still using you to bring people to me. And so one of the big things, we can't fight God's sovereignty. We can't fight his will. We can try, just like Jonah did, but as you see, it brought this great storm, and it brought Jonah down to this place where he finally recognized, throw me into the sea. I'm the one who's bringing this upon you. And then also there's this point where it says in verse 13 that the sailors, nevertheless, the men rowed hard to get back to dry land, but they could not, for the sea grew more and more tempestuous against them. So here Jonah is telling them, you have to throw me into the sea. And the sailors are actually showing more of the compassion that a Christian should be showing, that Jonah should be showing towards these men, than he is showing them, kind of thing. Let me reword that. I think I mixed my words up. But they refuse to throw Jonah into the sea. And they're trying to save and row so that they don't have to throw Jonah into the sea. And yet Jonah should be the one going and saving people, bringing God to these people, bringing the word of the Lord to these people, but he refuses to. So it's like the pagans are trying to save Jonah, and Jonah is refusing to save the pagans, where Jonah, the Christian here, Jonah, the one who is a Hebrew, who he says in the first part of this chapter, he fears the Lord, should be the one showing that compassion. But in the end, it's, this great storm that God brings to them. And it's their fear of this storm that then turns them to the fear of the Lord, when they see that he is the one who brought the storm, and he is the one who can calm the storm. And it's because of the storm that it brings them to this understanding. And so, like I said, we cannot fight God's sovereignty, although we may try. It will not go our way. They throw Jonah in, and the storm instantly calms, and this is what opens the eyes, and they turn their fear of the storm to the rightful fear to the Lord. It's fear of the world, fear of the storm is now turned on the fear of the Lord, the rightful fear, showing how powerful God is and how he is the one who should be feared above all. And so also there's a picture of Christ here as well. And although Jonah is a very poor representation of Christ, he's running away, he's living in sin and trying to do the exact opposite of what Christ or God has called him to do, because of his sacrifice in throwing him into the ocean, the judgment of God, which is the storm, was calmed. And so you could see the picture of Christ to come, where, Christ comes, he lives the perfect life, he lives the sinless life, as opposed to Jonah, who couldn't live a perfect life and who chose to run away from God. Christ lived the perfect life, and he sacrificed his self, turning that storm, that judgment, away from us. And now we have the peace of Christ. We have the peace between God, and it's because of that sacrifice. So here you see that picture of Christ as well. Once the sailors throw Jonah in and the storms calm, there's also that sometimes in the storms that come our way, God uses those to really show us his love and compassion and mercy. And sometimes it is those storms that are his compassion, because sometimes it takes a lot for our stubbornness to, relinquish that, fight. We love to have our way, and we don't want to give up that way. And so just like Jonah thought his way was best and he took it upon himself to run away from God, it brought him into that storm, not only bringing him in danger, but it brought these sailors in danger as well. But because of that storm, because of that judgment that God was bringing upon Jonah, it not only brought Jonah to then further go back to where God has called him to, once they threw him in the water, it says the big fish swallowed Jonah up and spit him out at Nineveh, where God literally was like, no, you are going to continue what I have called you to do. And that also shows, God's mercy and compassion, forcing him to continue what God has called him to do, to continue walking in his way. That's the sanctification. We have to be following his way to be sanctified. And in the beginning of this passage, there's a couple words that, stand out, where God tells Jonah to arise, go to Nineveh, the great city. But then it says, there's a couple times where it says Jonah went down to Joppa, to Tarshish, away from the presence of the Lord. So he paid the fare and went down into it, but when he was on the ship, he went down into the inner part of the ships and he laid down and was asleep. And so in the beginning, there's that poetic, here God is calling him to arise, to walk in his way, but Jonah is going down further and further and allowing himself to fall into sin and going away from God. But then he uses the sailors, and the sailor comes in and uses that same word, arise, the captain. So the captain came and said to him, "What do you mean, you sleeper? Arise, call out to your God. Perhaps the God will give a thought to us." And so it's just even in Jonah's sin, he's still calling Jonah. He's still calling out to him and telling him, follow me, follow what I was saying. And so it's just there's also that mercy, and, God doesn't leave us. Yes, our sin will bring us into, storms. It will bring us into places we shouldn't be, and it'll bring us down into, some really dark places, but God will be there calling us to arise and follow him still. And in that, sometimes what we do and fall away can also be a testament to others to come to Christ as well. Just like this, Jonah running away from God, bringing this storm, was a testament. The second they threw him in and the storm was calmed, was a testament to these sailors to turn and fear God. And they made vows to God as well. So it's just the hand of God is, always in control. It's his sovereignty, his sovereign plan. And although we may try to throw a wrench in that, sometimes it's our sin that God can use to bring others to him and bring ourselves to him as well. And he's still calling us to arise, still calling us to go. And so sometimes it's the storm itself that is God's mercy. Sometimes it's the storm itself that really opens our eyes to what we are doing and who we are running away from. And so it just was like reading this story, it really was encouraging, to know that yes, we fall short. Yes, we sin, and yes, we shouldn't. But we still have a merciful God. We still have a sovereign God, and we still have a compassionate God. And even the storms that he brings our way is his kindness, and it is him showing where our eyes should turn to. We say it on this podcast all the time, put God in his proper place. And when we put God in his proper place, we feel his peace. The storms calm in his presence. It's only in him that we can fully surrender over our will and recognize how powerful, how loving, and how kind he is to us. That perfect, sacrifice, that perfect Savior who came and did not deserve the cross at all, yet he sacrificed himself so that we may come to Christ, so that we may fully enjoy him, and glorify him, praise him, and fear him. And so it is there's so much you can glean out of, the book of Jonah. And one of the beautiful things in the Bible is that all of these characters in the Bible, some of them are really not pretty, their humanity comes through. We see David and what he did, Jonah, him running away from God. All of these characters in the Bible aren't perfect, and yet it just proves and it just shines Christ's perfectness and God's perfectness through, And even in my life, so many things have shown how imperfect I am, yet I can turn and look to Christ and but you have taken me away from so many things. You have literally taken me out of my own doing, kind of thing, And so even in the midst of storms that God brings our way because of our own stupidity, is his kindness, is him showing us, turn to me, come back to me, arise. He is sovereign, and his will is sovereign, and we need to be listening for that, following that, constantly going to him and, praying for his guidance, his wisdom in our lives. And it's a beautiful thing that he doesn't leave us, he doesn't leave us or forsake us. He knows us, he knows that we fall short, and yet he still continues to strengthen us with his grace and with his mercy and with his compassion, his love, and all of these characteristics of God that you see throughout the Bible. They never fail to come out in every part of the scriptures. And so, I hope that was an encouragement, because like I said, I've been reading through the book of Jonah, and that stood out to me, especially that one verse or not one verse, but 15 through 16. So they picked up Jonah and hurled him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows. So it's just like through his, sovereignty, he used Jonah, who was running away from him. He used him to accomplish not only saving one group of people, the Ninevites, but also saving these people, the sailors. Little did Jonah know, he didn't want to do the one thing God was calling him to do, and yet in two instances, because of that, God brought these sailors to his fear. They offered sacrifices to the Lord and made vows. So I think it really is a beautiful thing, and I will probably stop here before I keep rambling on. So I hope you guys have a great week. I'll try to get this up soon for you guys. Don't know what's coming next, but Lord willing, it'll be beneficial to me, to you, and to anyone who listens. That is the prayer. Well, thanks for being here, guys. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you next week. Bye.